Thank you for joining me tonight. This is my weekly live stream. For those of you who don't know, for those of you who might be new, I do these every Tuesday on Chimoge's Comments at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time plus African time. That's 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time plus African time. And today, the African time rather has turned it into tonight because I'm beginning this at almost 11:30 p.m. That's just how it be sometimes, but every week on this day, no matter how big the African time comes to be, I'm here to give y'all something. So please, thank you so much for joining me. Please like the stream. Please also share it with people you know on whatever platform you're on. This is the first time actually on Chimoge's Comments I'm doing multi-stream. For those of you who follow some of my other networks, because I exist on multiple platforms, but networks, I've done it before on one of them, in Quarrier, and then I also did it on. I think I did it once on. Actually, no, my bad. I think I've done. Yeah, I did a previous multi-stream here, but this is the first time I'm on Twitch. Yeah, so shout out to the Twitch gang. But I done the multi-stream with YouTube and Facebook before, but this is the first time I'm also on Twitch. So shout out to the Twitch gang. Those of you who are here newly, but again, please like the stream and share it with people you know. Um, Today, as you can see from the title and thumbnail, the stream, um, I'm going to be talking about recycling, and in particular, I'm going to be going over an article that went viral recently about recycling. This is a new segment on Chimoge's Comments called Article Analysis, where basically I read an article and analyze it in real time. Decided to do this because I kind of done a review of an article, basically, at least one live stream where I went over an article a lot on Chimoge's Comments America, one of my other networks. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. If you're not, go follow that or subscribe to it on whatever platform you prefer. But anyway, I did it over there. It was a hit. So I thought, you know what, let me just make this a thing. So yesterday, Chimoge's Comments America did my first official article analysis there. And today on Chimoge's Comments, doing the first official article analysis here. But as usual, before I begin, I'm going to give everyone 4 minutes to get on the stream. And while I do that, I'm going to play some music for y'all. But for those of you who are watching this on replay, shout out to the replay gang. Just skip ahead. If you don't want to, just relive chilling with us, just skip ahead 4 minutes from this point. So you can get to the point where I get right into it. All right, see y'all in 4 minutes. Hold up. I'm getting the music, y'all. Don't worry. All right, y'all. I think that's been 4 minutes. Gonna go ahead and begin. I know. Also, just a quick update. I've from those of you who've been watching me from the beginning know I've kind of shifted around my background look here. Before y'all would either see a plain old 'cause this is a closet, right? This is the commentary action closet, right? The most famous, most intellectual closet in the world. All right. Um, Really, although I do everything in here now, maybe this is just the comments closet. Yeah, from now on, this is even bigger than the commentary action closet. This is the comments closet. All right, this is major. But anyway, right? Either y'all would see just this bare ass I guess what do you call it, clothing shelf, or my clothes here. But then I move, put my books here, make it look a little more intellectual. But now I've added some stuff. So if you can see behind me, I have a poster of the greatest footballer of all time, Pele. Just to exude some more greatness in here. And then also sometimes when I move my head, y'all will have something nice to look at. Got that there. And then also bought this to help with the lighting. If y'all notice, the lights cover my whole face now. Before it was kind of more, because I got a lamp here. The lamp had a good run, but it was always kind of a thing where half of my face was dark. I was kind of looking like what's this guy? Oh, what's this character I'm thinking of? I was looking like Two-Face from Batman. You know what I'm saying? I was looking like that for a while, but now I look like a full person because you can see my whole beautiful face lit up. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get right to the article. So let me go on. Rejigger everything around. Whoa, there's two of me. Whoa. Okay, let's move. Hold up, I'm just moving the display capture. Just trying to get it on position. Let me get rid of... do y'all want me to keep this? I think I'll go ahead and keep it. Why not? Been with us for a while. Ron Shimmelgate's comments. Keep. Okay. That's there. Now, these little guys are... What are... Okay, here's the display capture. So y'all can see what I'm looking at when I'm looking at it. At the same time, y'all see my beautiful face. Let's make my beautiful face a little smaller. Alright, that's good enough. It's good enough. It's an interesting look. Anyway, so this article, let me make sure my volume's turned all the way up. Yeah, it is. All right. So no, that's the chat for YouTube. Shout out to those of y'all on YouTube, day ones. But anyway, this is the article I'm talking about today. And by the way, I do want to get out of here at a less crazy time than it is now and leave y'all out here too. So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna read and analyze the article for a total of max 40 minutes. And if it looks like it's gonna take a lot longer than that, then I'm just gonna pause, and then I'll finish it up next week, or at least next time. I guess on a different week, I'll say, because it's possible next week I'll have something else I want to present. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that if I don't get to finish this today, there will be a part 2, okay? So if we can't get it all done in that 40 minutes, there will be a part 2, so don't worry. But I'm going to set my, before I start reading, I'm going to set a little 40-minute timer, right? But let me explain the video before I do all that, or explain the article rather. So this article is from Greenpeace. For those of you who don't know, Greenpeace is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, environmentalist organizations in the whole world. So Greenpeace put out a report maybe like last week, maybe it was even up to 2 weeks ago. No, this is last week. This is October 24th, 2022. So they put out the report last week talking about recycling, and they were saying that a lot of most of the plastic that gets produced doesn't get recycled, right? So this report went all over the place, and other news outlets picked up the report. But some of the things that the other news outlets said wasn't quite right. And after I'm done with this, I'll show you that. But anyway, I just wanted to go straight to the source and get you the article that talks about this. So the big question is, how effective is recycling? Does it work or does it not? Right? Do things actually get recycled or do they not? Right? Because that was the whole discussion that this thing kicked off when it went viral. All right. So let's begin reading. New Greenpeace report. Plastic recycling is a dead-end street. Year after year, plastic recycling declines even as plastic waste increases. Paper, cardboard, and metals are all recycled at a high rate, but plastic continues to be trash. So let me just stop there. Already at the beginning of the Greenpeace article, because keep in mind, Greenpeace are the actual people who produce the report. They ain't a second, third, fourth, fifth party. This is the source. They make it clear that when they're talking about things not being recycled properly, they're only talking about plastic. Because everything else that gets recycled, paper, cardboard, and metals, all get recycled at a higher rate. But it's just the plastic that's a no-go. And this is real important to note because when you look at the headlines, some of the headlines that were made, particularly by conservatives around this, they tried to say that Greenpeace was admitting that recycling in general didn't work. Because as you can see here, the City Journal, I don't know if they're conservative or not. Let's look it up. Let me set this 40-minute timer. Do 39 minutes because I've been talking for a little bit already. But let's see, are they conservative? The City Journal is a public policy magazine and website published by the conservative Manhattan Institute for Policy Research. So there you go. These are conservatives. And these conservatives were trying to say Greenpeace says, oh, recycling doesn't work. Because, you know, conservatives are really against environmentalism. They're against the idea that we need to pay any special attention to our environment. And of course, in some ways, the left does go too far with their environmentalism, where they say some things around it that aren't quite right. But in general, the whole idea that we need to do a better job looking after our environment and that we are destroying the earth, that's spot on. That's indisputable. If you think that the way we treat the earth is fine, if you think the way we use our resources right now is fine, it's not wasteful, it's not damaging, then I mean, you living in Oz, honestly. You ain't on earth. Okay? So this conservative nonsense is ridiculous. And just to give you another idea of how ridiculous some of the conservatives got with this, let's go on Twitter and see what some of these big conservative pundits tweeted about it, right? So let's see. Let's see. Okay, look, this other person tweeted things we all know. Even Greenpeace admits that recycling doesn't work. It looks like that other article. Some other people, as I was saying, recycling is a scam. But there's a particular tweet I'm looking for. Is she a big person? Well, she's a climate activist. This isn't who I'm looking at. But there's one. Forgive me. There's let me look up for his name. This is one conservative pundit. I think his name is Jacob Prosobiec. He's a noted white nationalist. So one tweet from him in particular I saw. No. His name is Jacob something. What is this? Forgive me, y'all. I got a virus. Recite. No. Spelled it wrong. Forgive me, y'all. I'm trying to find the tweet. It's an interesting tweet. He's claiming that the figure is inaccurate. Maybe we'll get into that when we read the article. Because keep in mind, y'all, I've never read the article before. Just trying to find this. Let me look up the name of the dude because it's just so I can find it. Forgive me, y'all. Okay, no, it's Jax Posobiec. Okay. He put out a tweet. Here we go. So Jack Posobiec, and apologies y'all for taking so long to find it, but I got it. This is a big time conservative pundit, influencer, activist. He's real far right. He tweets this out. This thing from some website called Human Events, might be another conservative site, saying Greenpeace admits plastic recycling does not work, harms environment. Okay, so already he's coming out. To be fair to him, he did put the word plastic in there to make it specific. He's talking about plastic, but overall, what he's trying to imply is that recycling in general, the whole vibe that Republicans and conservatives were going with off this. Because even when you're looking at what Greenpeace says about plastic specifically, it's not saying that the recycling plastic itself is completely useless or that it doesn't work at all, okay? Because I still say you should still recycle your plastic, okay? Because it's better than not doing it. And when we get into the weeds of the article, you'll see why, right? But these people are running with the headline or with the piece of information, creating these misleading or just outright false headlines, just running with it, and spreading all sorts of misinformation and bad ideas, and overall just discouraging care of the environment in general. That's the whole energy they're trying to put out. But anyway, the whole reason I was even going into that is just because I want to underline that the article itself, the research itself, the report itself does not support that nonsense. Okay. Let me see. Are there any questions before I go on to the meat of the article? Anybody got questions? Okay, no questions. All right. Let's keep going, y'all. Most plastic simply cannot be recycled, a new Greenpeace USA report concludes. Circular claims fall flat again, released today, and that's the name of the report. It's a pretty weird name, but that's just what they decided to call it. Finds that U.S. households generated an estimated 51 million tons of plastic waste in 2021, only 2.4 million tons of which was recycled. Okay. So that's a pretty startling statistic. So let's even just do the math here. So U.S. households created 51 million tons of plastic waste, and only 2.4 million was recycled. So let's get out the good old calculator. All right. So then let's go 2.4 divided by 51, because obviously, if we're one, down from a high of 9.5% in 2014 and 8.7% in 2018. At that time, the US exported millions of tons of plastic waste to China and counted it as recycled, even though much of it was burned or dumped. So again, that's also troubling because it sounds like in the past they were doctoring the numbers, right? Because it's saying before they were getting numbers like 9.5 or 8.7% of all plastic recycled, right? But really what was happening is America was sending it to China and saying, oh, we recycled that, even though China didn't end up recycling that plastic, right? So it looks like now they're being more honest with the statistics. They're not counting that nonsense. Maybe they're not even still shipping it to China, the plastic waste that is, and then you get a real figure that's closer to 5 to 6%. Because even 9.5%, the highest number here, is still low. Because that would mean that more than 90% of the plastic that goes to be recycled doesn't actually get recycled, or at least that is thrown away. Because actually here it doesn't say that this is the percent of all the plastic. Maybe that's what that other guy was talking about why the statistic was flawed. Because actually, this 51 million tons of plastic waste is just all the plastic waste produced. It doesn't say what percent of that waste was actually put in a recycling bin, right? Because obviously, if someone throws plastic in the trash, it's not going to get recycled. So then that could drive down the percentage. So that is something to look into. Let's put a pin in that and keep going. But anyway, the whole point of that first paragraph there is that official statistics for plastic recycling show that it's lower than even in previous years. And that's probably just because they stopped cooking the numbers. All right. By EMF NPE standards, an item must have a 30% recycling rate to receive the recyclable classification. Two of the most common plastics in the U.S. that are often considered recyclable, PET number 1 and HDPE number 2, typically bottles and jugs, fall well below the EMF NPE threshold, only achieving reprocessing rates of 20.9% and 10.3% respectively. For every other type of plastic, the reprocessing rate is less than 5%. This is real interesting because this is news to me. So they say, first of all, even the government standard, well, this isn't the government. This looks like Ellen MacArthur Foundation. That sounds like a nonprofit of some sort. Let's look it up. Okay, it looks like they're just a company headquartered in the UK. What does the Ellen MacArthur Foundation do? The Ellen MacArthur Foundation works to accelerate the transition to a circular economy. I don't even know what that means. We develop and promote the idea of a circular economy and work for business, academia, policymakers, and institutions to mobilize system solutions at scale globally. I don't know what that means. Does anyone else know what that means? Um, do any of y'all watching know what that means? Do any of y'all watching on replay know what that means? If so, hold up. Why does it say I've only been live streaming for 4 minutes? What is this? Hold up, what's going on? I don't know what is. Hold up. Sorry, y'all. Looks like a bit of a technical difficulty here. There's a glitch. I don't know what is. Ugh, now I can't. Where is the. Okay, I'm sorry, y'all. I can't see the chat. I don't know what's happening. It looks like there's a glitch. Hold up. Let me just make sure I'm still online, y'all. Let's see. I don't know what's happening. It looks like there's a glitch. Hold up. Let me just make sure. Okay. According to YouTube on my phone, I'm still up. Okay, here's the chat back. I don't know why it's saying I've only been live for 5 minutes. I don't know what that's about. Because clearly on my phone it says the right thing, which is like 29 minutes. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like some crazy glitch, y'all. Let's see what's happening on Facebook. Is it? Okay. No, I'll just sort this out after the live. At the very least, I'm up on YouTube. Yeah. Facebook, if you're here, can you let me? Anyone watching on Facebook, can y'all let me know that I'm up? Same with Twitch. Yeah, but anyway, let's keep going. Sorry about that, y'all. Looks like some glitches got going on here. But anyway, yeah, so anyway, this Ellen MacArthur Foundation, right? They yeah, so it looks like they're just some private company, kind of a vague mission statement, but I'm sure they're some sort of big movers and shakers. So anyway, they set the standard for whether or not a plastic is considered recyclable. But in order for it to be considered recyclable, it just has to have a 30% recycling rate. So in other words, it only has to be able to be recycled 30% of the time. So already that seems like a pretty low bar. I would think that if something's recyclable, you should be able to recycle it almost every time you try to, right? Not 30%. That means 7 times out of every 10 you try and recycle it, you can't. That doesn't seem recyclable to me. Or if it is, that's a real loose definition, right? So already there, I think that standard is too low. But then, even with that standard, a lot of the stuff that the US government is considering recyclable don't even meet that standard, right? They're talking about 2 types of plastic that have a 20.9% and then a 10.3% recycling rate, which is terrible. And then every other type of plastic has a reprocessing rate less than 5%. I mean, whoa. So, you know, how recyclable is any of this plastic then? If not, what? That's crazy. That's something else to look into. What? Because actually, I didn't even know there were different types of plastic until I saw this here about them. These two different plastic names, right? But that's something to look into. Are there any plastics that you can recycle almost every time? Are there even any plastics that exist that can meet this 30% recycling rate? That's something to look into. But according to this paragraph, it's real hard for them to even get close to that standard. So that's terrible. Anyway, let's keep going. While PET number 1 and HDPE number 2 were previously thought of as recyclable, this report finds that being accepted by a recycling processing plant does not necessarily result in them being recycled, effectively negating the recyclability claim. So, wow. So basically, just because they go to the plant to get recycled doesn't mean they're actually going to get recycled. So, wonder what they're doing up in there. Let's read on. Lisa Ramsden, Greenpeace USA senior plastics campaigner, said corporations like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nestle, and Unilever have worked with industry front groups to promote plastic recycling as the solution to plastic waste for decades. But the data is clear. Practically speaking, most plastic is just not recyclable. The real solution is to switch to systems of reuse and refill. Wow, she just said it straight up. According to the report, which is an update to a 2020 report, mechanical and chemical recycling of plastic waste fails because plastic waste is extremely difficult to collect, virtually impossible to sort for recycling, environmentally harmful to reprocess, often made of and contaminated by toxic materials, and not economical to recycle. Ramsden said, single-use plastics are like trillions of pieces of confetti spewed from retail and fast food stores to over 330 million U.S. residents across more than 3 million square miles each year. It's simply not possible to collect the vast quantity of these small items of plastic sold to U.S. consumers annually. More plastic is being produced, and an even smaller percentage of it is being recycled. The crisis just gets worse and worse, and without drastic change, will continue to worsen as the industry plans to triple plastic production by 2050. Ramsden continued, we are at a decision point on plastic pollution. It is time for corporations to turn off the plastic tap. Instead of continuing to greenwash, interesting phrase, and mislead the American public, industry should stand on the right side of history this November and support an ambitious global plastics treaty that will finally end the age of plastic by significantly decreasing production and increasing refill and reuse. So let's stop there. What is all that I read said? Basically, if you couldn't tell already, what is this lady they quoted saying? Basically, you can't recycle plastic. So instead of just trying to recycle it, we have to move to a system of trying to reuse plastic products, right? But we're not doing that because the companies that produce these plastic products have been lying to the public for decades to say that recycling plastic is actually something that can realistically be done. And I'm assuming they're doing it because doing something other than that would cost them more money, right? So that's what this part of the article is saying. And that's pretty crazy stuff, you know. In a way it's new, in a way it's not new. It's new in that at least I and a lot of other people did not know that plastic was this hard to actually recycle, right? at least according to this article, right? But then at the same time, we are very used to hearing stories about major companies and major corporations lying to the public about harmful practices, right? So this is just another instance of that, according to this. Let's keep going. Over 99% of plastic is made from fossil fuels, and as big brands continue their addiction to this harmful material, they are fueling climate impacts and jeopardizing communities in the name of profits. All over the world, communities of color face disproportionate health impacts from the plastics industry, whether through incinerators, landfills, petrochemical facilities, polluted waterways, or the harmful plastic packaging pushed on communities. The report urges companies to take several additional steps to mitigate the systemic problems associated with plastic recycling, including phasing out single-use plastics, committing to standardized reusable packaging, and adopting a global plastics treaty to help set international standards. All right? So, in other words, the things they use to even make plastic, the fossil fuels, are toxic to the environment. And of course, that disproportionately hurts non white people, right? This is what they were talking about with the communities of color, because the plants where they process this poison is always, um, you know, next to the neighborhood of, black people or, you know, maybe Asians, Hispanics. We know Hispanic isn't a race, but the type of Hispanics that live near these things aren't white. Or even if it is next to white people, it's next to some lower tribe white people, right? Maybe people that we refer to as poor whites, right? All sorts of things, but really, of course, when you look into that, it's actually a tribal thing. That is even a form of racism as well. Um, so all in all, there is a racist aspect to this plastic pollution thing. Um, yeah, and then because of this, the best thing to do, according to the report, is for these companies, instead of trying to pretend like recycling plastic is actually effective, generally, that they should take aggressive steps to change things, including, getting rid of single-use plastics, um, making sure there's a standard of reusable plastic packaging, right? And then adopting a global treaty to set international standards. And what that means is that, just signing an agreement so that everyone in the world agrees what the plastic recyclability standard is. Now, that last point about the global treaty, um, I would have to look into what that plastics treaty is specifically and what's in it. But I don't necessarily agree with that. Just because I don't think I'm generally not for global mandates, even if there is something that everyone will be doing. If you're talking about how they go about enforcing that, making laws, that really has to be done at a local level. We need like small governments that actually enforce formal laws locally. And then if something is to be done worldwide, then we just have to develop a global culture. But you don't do that by getting everyone to sign one law or agree to one agreement, because people need freedom to maneuver. You know what I mean? Because if you're talking about signing a global treaty, then you need a global enforcer. And that sounds like you're creating essentially a government across the whole world to enforce things, which is not something I agree with. Um, I don't think that's a good political structure, and perhaps that could be an ulterior motive for pushing for a global plastics treaty, that sort of thing. So we do have to, in these environmentalist discussions, look out for hidden agendas certain groups have. Um, you know, I mean, both sides, and there's more than two sides, but if among the white ideologies, right, it's two general sides, the right and the left. Both sides have their own hidden agendas. Perhaps among the left, the hidden agenda on this, at least among some people on the left, could be to try and create, some sort of, uh, you know, governing organization for the whole world, right? So that could be why they're pushing this. And I've heard other people say that's what's behind some of the less push for environmentalism. So we gotta watch out for that. But other than that, the other stuff they talk about, those sound like solid solutions to me. Whether or not those companies will actually go for that, I don't think they will without being forced, because they've shown themselves to be obsessed with making money at all costs. They don't actually care about people. They don't care about human life. So I think they kind of have to be pushed to do that. Um, but anyway, let's finish it out. Looks like we're gonna be able to finish this, uh, with like maybe 8 minutes left from my 40-minute timer. But anyway, let's read the last paragraph. How we conducted the study. Okay, this is just them talking about their procedure for gathering all this information. The original comprehensive objective survey of acceptance of plastic items at U.S. residential material recovery facilities for curbside recycling has been continually updated since its creation in October 2019 and was re-verified in August 2022. The survey was performed and verified by technically qualified volunteers of the last beach cleanup, 2 registered professional chemical engineers, and a recycling industry expert. The acceptance information was found in the public domain and is publicly shared to promote transparency and establish a traceable account of facts related to recyclable claims and labels for plastic products. So in other words, what does that all mean? In English, I guess Ebonics, that is English. Common people speak, whatever. Well, actually, maybe there's a lot of Latin in there. Maybe it's not really English, but if you know, higher level English is really Latin, Greek and Latin, because the Brits, the people who are now Brits, freed themselves physically from the Romans, but they didn't free their minds. But that's a story for another day. But anyway, basically what this is saying is that how they got this was they have it looks like they have a survey or a database that keeps track of this information that they always update. And then they had people that they're trying to tell us are competent, because they call them experts, verify the information, and then certain information was just publicly available they used. That's what that sounds like to me. If any of y'all get anything different from that, let me know. But basically, whether or not you believe this, without actually going through and looking at the data yourself, it obviously want to go off your intuition. That's the ultimate thing that verifies any information you receive. But other than that, just kind of whether or not you trust these experts they said did it, and that I guess you could go look at this stuff they're calling acceptance information that was found in the public domain. But overall, what they said here, it actually sounds like it's true to me. The only thing I would say is that even though obviously this report makes it clear that recycling is not by itself going to solve even most of the plastic waste problem in the world, recycling plastic is still better than not doing it. Because sure, maybe if you recycle plastic, only according to this, only 5% of it will actually get recycled. That's better than 0%. It would be one thing if 0% of the plastic got recycled, but they're saying like 5% of it gets recycled. I mean, that's 5% less plastic that's going to be out in the environment, polluting things, killing animals, killing people. You know what I mean? Or deleting, I should say. I don't want to get in trouble on these live streams saying a word that's too harsh for different platforms. But yeah. Um, Let me see. Am I on Twitch? It says I'm live. Ooh, I can hear myself on Twitch. Okay, so I'm good on Twitch. That's interesting. Twitch. It says I'm live. Ooh, look at me looking at me. This is real trippy. Alright. Okay, so I'm good on Twitch. Alright, let's get off that. Okay, let me. Looking at me. Let's mute myself. Alright. Look at my beautiful face there. But anyway, so yeah, just back to the topic. Recycling plastic, even if you believe this report exactly, I say it's still better than not recycling it. Like, and when I say recycling, I'm talking in terms of the average individual deciding whether or not you want to throw plastic into the recycling bin or the trash bin. It's still better to throw it in the recycling bin because at least 5% of the plastic you throw in there on average is going to get recycled, and that's 5% less plastic that's going to be in the environment. Whereas if you just throw it in the trash, it's all going in there, so it's a little bit worse. And you know, we should try and be as good as possible, so do that. But obviously way more needs to be done to solve the plastic problem, since it, according to this, only 5% of plastic can actually be recycled. So let me pause for a second, see if there's any other questions from anyone. I don't know why this timer's off, y'all. Kind of irritating me a bit. But anyway, let me just learn to live with that. Okay. Anyone got any questions? I'm not seeing any. Alright, I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, so one other thing I want to touch on related to this, and then I'll call it a night. But there was one tweet I saw from one journalist on here that raised an interesting point I mentioned earlier about how accurate Greenpeace's statistics were. Okay, so this is the guy. Here's one tweet he's made. He said, "Reports like Greenpeace's harm that effort. I attended a recycling conference last week where managers complained that reports like this depress recycling rates because people lose faith in the system. A system, by the way, that works." And you know, I think there's some truth to what he's saying, because and maybe it's not on Greenpeace specifically, maybe it's just on other people who ran with it, but perhaps Greenpeace could have presented it in a different way, just so the wrong message wouldn't have got out. But basically, people were misinterpreting that report to think that recycling at all doesn't work, and that's not even close to what the Greenpeace report say. They were just talking about it being ineffective for plastic, right? Because for everything else, they were saying it's effective. So you should still recycle your paper, you should still recycle your metal, you should still recycle your glass, right? The thing that's not working so well is plastic. But even the plastic, some of it does get recycled. It is a real small percentage, 5%, but 5% is better than 0%. So while we as a society still need to deal with the other 95%, as an individual, you better throw your plastic in that recycling bin, so at least that 5% gets taken out of the system. But you know, that very nuanced truth isn't really coming through in the media, it looks like, based off the Greenpeace report. So I really sympathize with this tweet But then there's something else he said. And let's see, maybe I could just go on his timeline and find it, depending on how long ago he tweeted that out. Let's see. Okay, this is only 8 hours ago. Let's see. His name is Adam Minter. Bloomberg Opinion, Junkyard Planet, latest book, Secondhand, Travels in the New Global Garage Sale. Okay, interesting. But there's a particular, here we go. Here's the tweet. So he's responding to the article that the Boston Globe put out that talked about the Greenpeace report, right? So here's what he says. The Greenpeace claim of a 5% recycling rate is highly misleading and wrong. They calculate it by dividing consumer plastic recycled by all plastics produced, one-time use water bottles, but also durables like auto bumpers, toilet seats, etc. Wow. So if that's true, and it sounds like he's actually, oh, there's my 40-minute timer. Let me get a move on then. But if that's true, and it sounds like he's actually gone and looked at the data himself, then that is really misleading because, the average consumer, when they're thinking about recycling things, is thinking about their, water bottles and things like that, not a toilet seat. I didn't even think a toilet seat was recyclable to begin with. Let me re-find Twitter. Here we go. So yeah, that is deceptive. He continues. That calculation was done by a different organization, not Greenpeace. And that is kind of in line with what we read in the article, because they were saying they got their statistics from somewhere else, some other database, it sounded like. I've been covering recycling for 2 decades, and I've seen dozens of high-quality plastics plants. Fact is, there is a shortage of recycled plastics. Brands badly want them. Okay, so it seems like what he's saying with this tweet is that the problem is there aren't enough plants, as in facilities, that are made to recycle plastics. Not that it's not possible to be done. Reports like Greenpeace's harm that effort. I attended okay, this is the tweet we read earlier. None of this is controversial. Reporters just need to call up their local recycling programs or ask to visit plastics recycling facilities. Here are some great resources published by R Recycling. Alternatively, here's an opinion thread on why plastics recycling is working. That is not a myth, and an accompanying thread by me. Okay. And for those who point out that my piece looked at an industrial recycler, yes, it did. That's who was close to me at the time. But it's not hard at all to find a consumer recycler. There are dozens, including in the Boston area. And I think somehow there's a difference between those things, but I don't know. If any of y'all know what's the fundamental difference between an industrial recycler and a consumer recycler, please let me know either in the chat or in the comments on the video, and I'll do some research of my own, and in the future at some point I'll come back to you with that knowledge. There is a surplus of misinformation on Twitter. I'm very sorry to see that it's bleeding into recycling, an industry and activity that's provided tangible benefits to both the economy and the environment. Anyway, here's a nice directory of hundreds of plastics recyclers around the world. No myths here. So I think what he's saying resonates with me. I think the truth, my intuition is telling me that the truth is somewhere between the Greenpeace report and what this guy is saying. I think Greenpeace is probably right that a lot of our plastic is not getting recycled, and that even plastic that goes to be recycled, maybe a lot of it isn't getting recycled. At the same time, this guy's probably right that that 5% number they came up with isn't right, because it's made from a skewed data set. It's counting things that shouldn't be counted, like toilet seats. And the other thing that jumped out to me is they talked about all the plastic waste produced. They didn't, in the Greenpeace report, they didn't differentiate between plastic waste that had been thrown away into the trash can and plastic waste that had actually been put in a recycling bin. And I think that's a key difference, right? because it would be, really, we need to know what percent of plastic waste that goes in recycling bins gets recycled, right? So that's the real test of whether or not it's effective. Because if a large percentage of that is getting recycled, then that would just mean that more people need to recycle. Um, but anyway, I'm gonna post the link to both the article. I mean, the link to the article is in the description. I'm also gonna post it in the chat. No, this isn't it. Let me post it in the chat. And then I'm also going to post a link to this guy's thread. His name is Adam Minter. Seems like an intelligent guy. Post a link to the thread in the chat, and I'll probably update the description of the video so that it's there. The live event is over. What? No, it's not. Wait a minute. I'm still live, y'all. Ain't I still live? Yeah. What is going on tonight? What? Why did it cut off on YouTube? Yeah, why did my live... Wait a minute. So then what am I live on now? Hold up. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. How did that cut off? What is going on? Hold up. Am I still on Twitch? What's going on? Hold up, y'all. Okay, I'm on Twitch. Don't know if I'm on Facebook. For some reason, YouTube cut off. Wow, that's frustrating. Yeah, I don't know why YouTube cut off, man. Okay, I'm on Twitch. Don't know if I'm on Facebook. For some reason, YouTube cut off. Yeah, I mean, I hope I'm still on Facebook. I can't really, it's not really easy for me to see whether or not I'm on Facebook. Dang. But anyway, yeah, well, sorry guys, for the on the platforms where it cut off, hopefully it's just YouTube. I'm gonna get the full video up there so y'all can watch that. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and begin to close it out. That Twitter thread I was trying to link to, I'll make sure I get the link to that in the description of the full video that gets uploaded to YouTube, as well as on Facebook and of course all other platforms. So sorry about that, y'all. But anyway, thank y'all for those of y'all who joined me tonight, and thank y'all. Thank you to those of y'all who joined me. We're watching on replay right now, so thank you. This is my final thoughts on this. I think the bottom line, I think the key takeaways from all this, and let me get rid of this, make myself big again. But the key takeaways from that report and that article is basically that recycling is still generally effective. So you should recycle. Absolutely, you should recycle. But we, as a society, need to improve how we recycle plastic, and if we can't figure out a better way to recycle it, find some other way to deal with it. Because most of the plastic waste we produce, it looks like, or at least a large percentage of it, is not getting properly recycled. So we need to find a way to deal with that. Whether that is by using more reusable plastics, using less plastic, or just building more plastic plants to recycle things. We got to figure out some way. And then even also making sure we get more clearly accurate statistics on how much plastic is actually being recycled. Because as y'all can see from tonight, there is dispute around that. But yeah, that's basically it. But anyway, thank y'all so much for joining me. Please like the video. Also share it with people you know. And then also, please also consider joining my Patreon, because there's going to be some exclusive content and information. That is also a way to continue supporting me. Another way to continue supporting me is if you're on Twitch, you can hit that donate button. If you're not on Twitch, you can follow the link that I've posted in the description and the chat to donate. And when you follow the link, by the way, it's going to say OZ Bang Wonku, right? Not just Chimoge's comment. That's just because Chimoge's comment is under